Hi, welcome to Reclaim Lumber Products, tips and techniques for installing our kitchen sink engineered wood floor. We want to tell you just a little bit about it so that it can help you with the install. It typically comes in widths of 4, 5, and 7 inches. We like to say that this product has all the benefits of both a solid wood and an engineered combined. It has the overall thickness of a solid wood. Your height from your nail groove up to the top is about 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch, which is the same as the solid wood. Overall thickness is 18 millimeters, close to 3/4 of an inch. It is not pre-finished, but it is pre-sanded and pre-filled, which means that you get a side applied finish, which is a lot more custom and repairable, more durable, longer lasting than a pre-finished floor. You don't have to deal with scratches and then not be able to fix them. If you put a repairable finish on the floor, you can fix it in place. What we're going to show you a little later on in this video is us installing the floor and using the Waterlox finish, which is a tung oil finish. It's a several coat process, but it's very easy to touch up and repair without having to resand the whole floor. What we're going to do right now is just go through kind of a collage of tips and techniques. Not a complete instructional how-to video, but some tricks that will help you install the floor a little bit easier. This floor, since it is a random width of 4, 5, and 7, you get roughly 1/3 of each width, not necessarily exactly 1/3 in linear foot or square foot terms. But what you want to do is, as you're going through the floor, when you get about halfway through the install, you should have used up about half of each width. And do not establish an exact pattern, otherwise you will run out at the end and then wish you had a certain width. So keep it random. Try to do your important areas first and your areas that show, because then you can set aside boards that might have a color or a defect or something in them that you don't like as much, and then you can use those in closets or underneath cabinets and so forth later on. And then also, if you kind of run out of a certain width, you won't necessarily be in as much trouble at the end where it's going to show the most. Also, when you're running your widths, if you think about it a little bit ahead of time on your layout, you can oftentimes use the varied widths to your advantage so that you have less waste. There's really no need for waste in this product. You can go and install it with almost a 0 waste factor if you're careful, because it's defected so well, and in our manufacturing process we get rid of a lot of the problems with the reclaimed aspect to it. So never generate any waste that you're going to have to throw away. Always use your cast-offs to restart a new row, or in this case where we are first starting our first row in this room, what we did is we figured out a combination that wasn't going to require any ripping of the boards and throwing away a piece. So this door jamb here at the threshold is set back 2 inches from the face of this wall over here. So what that means is that we can start with a 7-inch board here and a 5-inch board here and not really have to rip either one. We did have to relieve the back side of this one slightly to go over some of their caulking and other mess they had on the floor. The way we're going to be setting this floor is it's glue down and nail down, which means it's not a full spread mastic. We don't have to worry about a vapor barrier here. It's not going over concrete, but we use subfloor adhesive, which is really easy to apply, less mess in a caulking gun. And then on the initial board, sometimes we'll face nail it and later come back and fill those holes with a finished nail gun, or we might use some trim head screws to put it in. And then after we get going, we use a regular flooring nailer. Since we're gluing it down and we put the strips of glue about 8 to 12 inches on center, we can use a few less nails than normal, and it's kind of a hybrid combination. You get the stability, the no squeaks of the glue, but you don't have to do a full spread on it. And then the nails sort of help you hold the floor in place while you're moving and going fast. So in this case, what we've done here is this floor, we've snapped the line the length of the room, made sure that we're parallel to this door and the opposing wall, so that our layout has the rows looking nice and straight and consistent against all the walls. And we've started out on that line, and then our layout will proceed from there in a random width pattern. What I'll show you here that we're probably going to do just on this floor, because we're doing a few pieces, we kind of do make sure on our glue that we get a little bit at the start and then about every 8 to 12 inches. And if we want here to kind of create a nice seal, we've got to be careful on this glue that you don't leave it open for too long, because what'll happen then is it'll create a lump and it won't glue down. But this caulking gun is really nice because it has a lot less mess than normal mastic, and you're not having to spread it with a trowel. And then we can just go ahead, nail it in place here and there, and come back and fill the nail holes later. So here what we're going to do is show you some pattern and layout techniques of trying to avoid things that just cosmetically make the floor not look as good. Try to keep your joints, whether they're a real joint with it that's clear into the board, or our product when it comes has a splice in here where the backer is continuous, maybe in the 5-foot length, but the veneer might look like it's spliced. So when the floor is laid, you don't actually know which was this or which was the real end of the board. And when the floor is glued down, it really doesn't matter where the joints are, and they're 90 degrees, so it's great yield because you can cut the board anywhere you want, start and stop it. It's just that with these, it looks better if you can have shorter looking veneers at the end of the rows, not in the middle of the field, and not have what appears to be a joint too close together, or have an established pattern. So things to avoid, we'll show you a mistake we made here, is try not to have the joints with pieces right next to each other be too close. It's nice to keep them an inch or two apart or more. So if you look here, we're pretty close on this joint versus that one. That doesn't look so good. Structurally, it's never going to matter. It's just aesthetics. Same thing right here. We have one that's a little bit close. Another thing to avoid is a repeat pattern, what we call an H joint. And so that would be if you go one row and the joint's here, and then you skip a row and the next joint's directly across from that. Try to avoid that. If you go over here, try to avoid what we call a stair-step pattern, where it's a real consistent space that goes up. So you have one here, then the next one over 2 inches, and the next one over 2 inches. You wouldn't want that keep repeating on down the way. And what's helpful is if when you start your rows, you have random length pieces to start them. That keeps all the joints random. This glue has a fairly good open time, 10-15 minutes, but try to get to it quicker than that, maybe in the first few minutes. And if you bring your piece in, these joints are machined very tight, but it's not so tight that you can't pop them in. It's nice to have a rubber mallet and a hammer. And then when you go to nail it down, your nail gun will help suck it in tighter if need be. I always put one at the beginning and end for sure, and then maybe a couple throughout the middle. Normal nail spacing is about 8 to 10 inches apart on a hardwood floor install. Like I say, if you're using it in conjunction with the glue, you can get by with a little bit less nails and more glue to make up for it. So one thing I'll show you here is we've pre-staged some material that I haven't laid yet. It just helps when I'm going to go and glue and nail it down to have some material ahead of time, somebody working ahead of me. It makes the project go fast. We've staged it in anticipation of trying to keep our joints looking good and our random widths spaced out. It also helps you kind of sort your material a little bit ahead of time instead of just grabbing off the top of your stack. If you have somebody that has a preference of pieces they like or dislike, or the quality of the boards, sometimes by going through your material ahead of time, you do these areas that are going to show, set aside boards that you maybe don't like as much. They can go under cabinets or into closets. And then all this material is very usable, and from a reclaimed aspect, it's an extremely high quality floor. We've done a lot of the defecting ahead of time by doing this engineered process where we've gotten rid of bad boards that normally in a solid wood, reclaimed wood floor, you'd have to throw away because they weren't any good putting down. But we've already kind of cut out and culled out a lot of that material. That being said, it doesn't keep you from still looking at the material, see if there's something we might have missed. When we're filling stuff, sometimes the nail holes the fill doesn't exactly get cleaned up as well going through the sander or through our inspection process, and every once in a while I'll keep a chisel handy and I'll have a piece like this one right here where I didn't like the way the fill came out, and I might just go and slice that off and clean that and make that fill spot look just slightly more natural. And since this material has so much character, it's very, very forgiving to sand it, chisel it, machine it, do with it whatever you want, and it hides abuse extremely well. And if you see a piece that you don't like, well, just set that aside, don't put it in the middle of your floor, and you can use it somewhere else where it's going to be less obvious. But by pre-staging a material like this, you can sort of see with the way it's going to look installed, and then it's not too late and it's not already nailed down. Well, we just finished laying the last board on this floor. It's a 2,600 square foot floor, and we want to show you our waste pile. It's possible if you plan your cuts and think ahead to have so little waste. We probably have about 10 square feet here of waste in our cut pile that wasn't usable, that we lost due to cutting angles and corners and around vents and registers, that sort of thing. We're just doing the final little touch up here, trying to get ready for finish, and we'll show you a few details. We've put tape around the edges of the walls where it won't get up on the walls, and we're going to finish right up to the walls with a paintbrush first and then use a lamb's wool brush later to apply it. We're getting ready to do our first coat of sealer now on this floor. We've touched it up with a few fill spots and key sanding in certain areas. And what we've done on this to get started is we went around the edge with a brush and did an initial coat right around the edges. Our first coats are with this Waterlox original sealer. We intend to do about 3 coats of it, and then we're going to switch to a satin for a top coat. Now, one thing to remember is it takes a minimum of 24 hours between coats when you're doing this. And just as an insider tip, it always takes longer than you think. You need good ventilation, and cold weather or humidity will slow it down. So between the first and second coat, you can usually get by with about 24 hours, but then I'd extend it to a few days between the second and third coat and the third and fourth coat. What we're doing with this particular job is we're going to put on the 3 sealer coats, and then we're going to pull off the job for a month or so while they finish installing cabinets and so forth, and then we'll come back at the very end and do the sealer coat. But this floor is just turning out gorgeous here. I'll show you what it looks like. We're applying it after we've gone around the edges. We go with our lamb's wool applicator and we start, and you just try to do a nice even coat. And what's key here is that you don't put on too much. It's very tempting to try to put on extra finish, but what I've found is that it won't cure out if you have puddles, and you're better off just doing a nice light coat and doing more thin coats than one real thick heavy coat.